Welcome to the Modern Mystics podcast. I'm your host, Alana Kaivalya, and I'm very excited today to have a conversation with amazing nutritionist, Kylie. She's got so much to share with us today, not only about nourishing ourselves, but nourishing ourselves as yogis and spiritual leaders. Kylie, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Alana. Thank you so much. I'm thrilled. I'm so excited.
So tell us a little bit about yourself. You and I have known each other for a long time. You've gone through many versions and iterations of Kylie, but for as long as I've known you, you've been passionate about nutrition. So tell us a little bit about your journey.
So this is, I think when you say many iterations of Kylie, I think you hit the nail on the head right there. And I think that's probably something that most people really relate to. So I am a registered dietitian, and I'm also certified as an integrative and functional dietitian. And so where I kind of fell into my little niche and my area of expertise that I really love is gut health, which is super tied into immunity and so therefore autoimmune diseases.
Absolutely.
And where a lot of this really came from for me was my own autoimmune experience. And so, I'll briefly just share because I think a lot of people listening to this are going to be like, yep, that's me, hands up. But I was feeling really ill, couldn't walk up the stairs without being like out of breath, like I just ran a mile. I couldn't think straight. I just felt awful. And I went, got some like classic blood stuff done. Long story short, I ended up having Hashimoto's. This, as you well know,
I know so much about that.
Thyroid autoimmune disease. And like you and many other people, the answer that I got was, here's a prescription. You'll take it forever. We'll probably have to increase the dose. Off you go, enjoy yourself. Which any of you listening to this who know me at all, please just try to picture my reaction to this. It was not good. It was not good. So, I calmly take the prescription and I tear it up when I get to the car and spend like nights sleeplessly just researching. And what ended up happening and what was the right answer for me was dealing with the root causes that I was able to identify through my food, through my gut, through the holes in my micronutrients, which was never brought into question, although it's tied hugely into autoimmunity, whether it's Hashimoto's or anything else. And by doing all of that testing and identifying and organizing for myself, here we are, no medication. I'm feeling amazing. This is my story. That's not to say that that's what everybody should or can expect, but that's where I was able to see, okay, this is not a straightforward answer for people. I know that I did it for myself. I know that I can help other people do it. I'm already working in the integrative and functional nutrition world. Here we go. It was perfect.
I love this. And Kylie, thank you so much for sharing some of your story. And for people listening to the podcast, you may or may not know, I have a similar story to Kylie's. I was diagnosed with Hashimoto's thyroiditis when I was 19 or 20 years old. And for those of you doing the math at home, that was a couple of decades ago, way before things became in fashion like integrative and functional nutrition or medicine. And so the prevailing wisdom of how an autoimmune disorder like that is still treated today and was back then was, you take this pill, we'll just increase the dose over your lifetime. Eventually your thyroid will die and we'll have to remove it. I did not want that to be my story. I struggled for many years trying to find alternatives. Unfortunately, my time with Hashimoto's came too early, and 4 years ago, I had to have my thyroid removed because my Hashimoto's was so bad. I wish I had the tools and resources to reverse it. I wish I had caught it early enough. They say that it takes an average of 10 years for a person with Hashimoto's to get a diagnosis, and it's because it takes that long for the immune system to actually destroy your thyroid so that your hormones aren't being made enough, and it shows up on the regular tests that they take. It's for anyone out there who has struggled with Hashimoto's or any autoimmune disorder, conventional medicine, in my humble opinion and in my non-medical opinion, only takes us so far. And another huge piece to this puzzle, which is often overlooked is the dietary element of it. And now this is something that I struggled with for many years, Kylie, and I know that you were there for much of this. I've known you through some of my deepest Hashimoto struggles. I've known you through when I had my thyroid removed. It was a major, major life journey for me. I can now confidently and excitedly say I'm in remission. I'm enjoying more health right now than I have ever in my adult life, and it is largely due to nutrition and supplementation. It's just wisdom. If I know in my heart of hearts that if I had this wisdom when I was diagnosed at 19 or 20 years old, I likely could have saved my thyroid. I deeply believe that in my own soul. I believe that to be true. I don't know that to be true, but I believe that to be true. One of my greatest struggles, Kylie, and something that I want to chat with you about today on the podcast is, through my entire struggle with Hashimoto's thyroiditis, I was also a yogi and also a yoga teacher. And there is an emotional and spiritual, let's say, doctrine or thought out there that if you are a yogi and a yoga teacher, you have to be a vegan or a vegetarian. And I was very in line with that, and I was vegan and vegetarian for many years, and I essentially completely crashed my thyroid, my health, everything so badly that one of my doctors looked at me and said, look, if you don't respect the thyroid that's in your body right now, I'm just going to take it out. And what he meant was that I needed to start eating protein and in real meat. And it took me years to come to terms with my beliefs as a yoga teacher and as a yogi, being a vegan or a vegetarian, and with my health needs that actually demanded protein. I've come to terms with that. I eat a paleo diet now. I promote it. I've talked with, in a previous podcast, I talked with Jenny Harris of White Oak Pastures about regenerative and sustainable farming, making good choices. But, Kylie, I know that you've been through this similar struggles. You're also a yogi. And, what do you think about all this?
So I think that what you're saying is what a lot of people are currently or have in the past experienced. I was vegetarian for a few years. Personally, it was partly because I was a really snotty, picky eater. And then the other part of it, which you can hardly fault somebody for, is for humane reasons. It doesn't feel good to people to know now how animals are treated and raised,
right?
And then put that in your body or somehow be, supporting the industry, if you will. But I was so sick. I was so sick when I decided to switch and start eating animal proteins again. I actually also was paleo for a period of time and kind of like found my transition through that. It just was like a switch got flipped. And I think if you're listening to this and you're feeling like somehow are pressuring you into eating animal protein, that's you're missing the point. The point is that if you have in your head this idea that you belong to this group of people who have to believe X, Y, and Z, or should believe X, Y, and Z, or do believe X, Y, and Z, but you don't feel good, that warrants a deeper look. Because what is the goal of what you are doing? Is the goal to prove a point? Is the goal to belong to a group of people? You're vegetarian, you're vegan, you're paleo, you're this, you're that. Or is the goal to figure out what you need to be able to show up for yourself and for your family, your friends, your community, and like be the best way that you can be? Because personally, I think if we really let things boil down, that is the goal. What
Absolutely.
good are we as a part of some group if we aren't actually good ourselves?
Right.
So I think part of the process of this is really being able to identify what is it that we are attached to and why. Can we let go of that attachment without undoing who we think we are, or while undoing who we think we are? And what does that end up looking like?
I think that's a beautiful point. Yeah. I struggled so much with guilt, Kylie. I felt guilty. I felt guilty for eating anything other than a vegan or a vegetarian diet for many years because I couldn't prioritize myself and my health over anything else. And I was very, God, there was so much shame around it too. And, I look back at younger me and I want to hold her. I want to tell her it's going to be okay. And I want to remind her that when you're in an airplane and you're given that, emergency talk at the beginning of the flight before you take off, the first person you've got to put the oxygen mask on is yourself. Because if you can't breathe, you are no good to anyone else. And so for all of us listening, you are a yoga teacher or a spiritual leader if you're listening to this podcast. Your work is to help and serve others, and you cannot do that unless you are healthy. And we want to encourage you to choose whichever way of eating is going to be most healthy for you. And that might be in one category, it might be in another category. And whichever way is most healthy for you, once you've discovered what creates optimal health for you, then you can make other conscious choices about how you get your food, where you get your food. Like I get all my meat from White Oak Pastures. I always choose to buy organic vegetables when I can. These are other choices, but I have to know first what my body needs so that I can continue to serve the world.
This is what I think. It is an easier decision to say, I am going to be a person that belongs in this group of people. Mm-hmm. It is a harder decision to then change that.
Yeah,
it is
definitely.
A harder decision to step away from what you or the people around you have an idea of what you should be doing and choose something that's actually more self-serving. Mm-hmm. But I also think that's a more powerful message. Mm-hmm. So to your point, the people who are listening to this are teachers and leaders and role models. What is it that you want to be modeling? The fact that you are able to follow a trend, even if you have totally legitimate reasons, which a lot of people really do. Or are you going to show like, okay, I understand why people do this and I don't disagree, but it's not my truth. It doesn't work for me. Mm-hmm. And I know because I've been sick for 20 years. I think a lot of people can look back and be like, that might be me.
Right. Absolutely.
Raise their hand.
It's definitely me. I'm totally raising my hand. And, the other thing about it, to your point, is that it is a very personal journey. I think that we are starting to recognize more and more that, nothing can be cookie cutter. Nothing really is one size fits all. There's no one right way to do anything, and there's certainly no one right way to eat. So, Kylie, I'd love to throw it back to you and get some advice from you as a dietitian and nutritionist. How might someone find out or figure out the right way for them to eat and stay healthy? What's that path look like?
It is a path. That's the real answer right there. Okay, so the beauty and the curse of anything nutrition related is that it's not black and white. Mm-hmm. There is no answer because, listen to what you and I are saying. You and I have similar experiences, but other people listening to this are going to say, well, when I stopped eating animal protein, I felt way better. Like, what are they talking about? And that's true too. And that's the point, isn't it? That's the point right there. What is right for you will not be right for me, mm-hmm. will not be right for the next person. Mm-hmm. And so in order to figure that out, you have to do just that. You have to do some figuring. You need to be, you have to be mindful. That's really, it's so annoying, isn't it? But that's what so much of this comes down to. You can't just boulder your way through life eating whatever you want, even with good intentions. Not paying attention to what's going on, not paying attention to what's going in your body and then how you feel, and then expect to be able to piece together some magic answer for what the right thing is. So what you need is an organized process for yourself. Mm-hmm. And that can look many, many different ways, but you need to be able to at least for a period of time, right? Once you find what works, you can kind of coast. But if you're in a place right now and you're listening to us and you're thinking well, geez, I guess I really don't feel great. 20 years, that sounds about right. That's me. Then the starting point is getting answers. Now, there's a million ways you could do that. You can go down the route of really working with somebody, doing testing and like really dialing things in straight away. Or you can start on your own without spending any money at all. Get yourself organized, write out what it is that you're eating. And I'm not talking macros, I'm not talking calories. I'm talking what is the food that is going into your body. If it's got a label on it, you need to turn that package around, look at the label. What is it that you're actually putting into your body? That's a good starting point. When you think, oh, I'm going to have a granola bar, it's granola, it's healthy. Yep, maybe that's true for you. Maybe you turn the label over and the ingredient list is like granola followed by 20 things you don't recognize.
Right.
That's a starting point. Clear that stuff out. Maybe that's all you do to start. Or maybe you've done that. Maybe you do eat all whole foods, organic, whole, healthy meats. Maybe you're already there. That's the more detailed stuff. Take a look at what you're eating. How do you feel? Can you match anything up? The unfortunate answer sometimes is that you can't. And that's where you really need to start thinking about working with somebody who can help you do this. This is not, although maybe it should be, a normal thing that people know how to do. We don't know how to feed ourselves.
Right. We don't.
I mean,
it's
think
true.
about that.
Especially,
we aren't taught that. We are not taught how do you feed yourself. You know, you think you are, and it's modeled for us, but what's being modeled? You know, I mean, unless you get super lucky and you have somebody who knows what they're doing. I mean, it's like me, I don't know how to do heart surgery. I was never taught that.
Right.
You know, and a lot of people, if they are not taught, and I mean handheld taught, it's just not something that they know how to do.
Well, and I think, you know, especially here in America, we're raised with a culture of food and diet that doesn't necessarily serve everyone for so many reasons, you know, and one of the things I would like to talk a little bit about, Kylie, so that some of my listeners can start feeling the results of whatever it is that they eat, because really it is all about how does it make you feel? Does it give you life or does it drain life from you?
Yeah.
You know, one of the things that that was very difficult for me to come to terms with and recognize was that what I felt as normal, my everyday normal, was actually not normal, right? I thought it was normal every day to wake up tired. I thought it was normal every time I ate to feel bloated. I thought it was normal to have what we call brain fog, where it's difficult to think through a sentence. I thought it was totally normal that I would eat less calories than everyone around me and still gain weight. That was my normal. And I would just say, I accepted it. And I said, oh, you know what? This is just my body. You know, I'm just different. And my level of awakeness, you know, I can't compare it to anybody else's, right? So I just figured this is what awake looks like. And I think a lot of people accept a quote unquote normal that is actually tremendously subpar from where their bar of normal can be, what is actually possible. And they've just lived with this subpar version of normal for so long, it's like they don't even recognize what amazing or good actually is. So what are some of the things that people experience that they might consider to be normal on a daily basis that are actually the result of a dietary choice that doesn't work for them personally? What are some of the things they might feel or experience?
I think your point here is so vital. These are the people that I work with every single day, where they come in and they're like, oh, bloated. I mean, yeah, of course I am, but that's not bloated. Why I'm,
yeah,
but I always am. So that's not the problem that I'm coming to you for. And I have to stop them and say, but it is. It is an issue. So here's just off the top of my head. When you eat your food, you should not feel worse than you did before eating. If you are a person that feels better when your digestive system is not in use, that is an issue. This is the basic human function, the basic human need. You have to be able to eat. You have to be able to feed yourself. If you can't do that in a way that feels at baseline comfortable, meaning that you don't really sense any change other than the fact that you don't feel hunger, other than the fact that maybe you feel slightly more energized because you're putting fuel in your body.
Or sugar.
If you feel, or sugar, right, exactly, or caffeine, or whatever it might be. If you feel anything like a headache, if you feel bloating, if you feel pressure in your lower abdominal area or right up under your rib cage, that's where your actual stomach is. If you have acid reflux, GERD, heartburn, not normal. Also, a little side note, the symptoms of having too much acid, what we would call acid reflux, are the same as having low stomach acid.
Little acid.
I can't tell you how many people I see who have been on acid blockers or PPIs or popping Tums all day long. We do some testing, and what we find is that they actually don't have enough stomach acid, and they've been perpetuating this problem. That is not normal. It's not something that you should be experiencing when you put a food into your body. So if any of that stuff that we just talked about is a red flag for you, this is the time where you should start thinking to yourself, okay, something is off. You don't have to have the answer as to how to do it. This is the starting point. Something needs to change. The next step is figuring out what that is.
Awesome. That's really great advice, because, you know, I certainly wish for not just my friends and colleagues, but all my listeners, that they feel extraordinary, that they feel amazing. And I want that for them, because I know how important the work they have to do is. And I know that they're going to be able to do that work and make a greater impact with an optimized level of health. So, you know, I am not a nutrition, which is why I bring you on a podcast like this to hopefully coach us a little bit with how to optimize our health and recognize and stop accepting a subpar level of normal as normal. You know, I hear everything that you're saying. I used to experience many of those things before I figured out which diet really works for me. You know, I talk a lot about the fact that as a yoga teacher or spiritual leader, we all have to do the work ourselves. We all have to do our own shadow work. We all have to figure out some of our triggers. And boy, oh boy, Kylie, aren't there some triggers when it comes to food?
Oh
So why don't we talk
God.
about some of the like emotional or mental obstacles or resistances that you often find with folks when you start to go down this road of discovering what might be the most healthful way of eating for them?
So here's the thing. The name of my practice is called Strata Nutrition. And the reason it is named this is because strata means layers. And it is a representation of exactly what you're saying. There are so many things piled on top of each other that have to be moved through. The work has to be done. That's the absolute thing. But figuring out how to work through all of those layers for people is a journey all in itself. It is not easy, like with anything. Anything that actually ends up mattering and being important is not an easy thing. This is no exception. This is no exception. And I think actually that's an important starting point for people to think that they are a failure because something like this takes work is the wrong starting point. It does take work, but it's not taking work for you because there's something wrong with you. It takes work for everybody. It's just that you might not see that side of it.
Well, and the good point about this is when they start to do a little bit of work, everything they do, they're going to see some pretty extraordinary incremental changes. Like once you start to realize how good you can actually feel, you're going to be like, I totally want to do this work because wow, I never realized I could wake up and not feel tired. I never realized I could just eat and feel more amazing after eating. You know, you kind of don't realize that. But what are some of the what are some of the excuses that people give you for not maybe cutting out a food that has been identified as not right for them?
The feeling of being overwhelmed is overwhelmingly the very first thing I say. There's too much information. That's what it is. There's way too much information. All of it applies. All of it doesn't apply. It's all right. It's all wrong. It all contradicts itself. And that's just the nutrition world, right? We talked about that. And so therefore it's overwhelming. And when any of us can relate to the feeling of not knowing where to start and to simply not starting. It happens with everything all the time. This is what I see the most often. When people don't have a way of identifying a starting point and organizing the plan that they're going to follow to be able to get to a result, they just don't start. I don't even blame them. I really don't. It's too much. It's just too much. On top of that, this idea of letting go of something that you have known for potentially your entire life, for potentially decades. I'll share a little story. I had some OCD stuff going on when I was in college and high school, and it was really, really like interfering in my life. And I was so unwilling to let it go because I just identified myself with I'm this person with this thing. And so it makes me kind of weird and unique in this way but the whole time, if I would have just let it go, I would have been able to move on with my life.
Right.
People do this with food also. They even if they don't like the person that they are because of their decisions or lack of decisions, it's who they know. Even if it's uncomfortable, knowing that is more comfortable than having to move through the transition of being something else that doesn't quite have a definition yet. And so, again, this applies to so many things in life, but particularly with food, because unlike somebody who, for example, is an alcoholic, you can't just stop eating. Right. That's not an option. You can't just avoid the topic and hope that during your avoidance you can do some work and like be okay then. This is a unique thing that you have to continue doing while also trying to find answers. And so you constantly find yourself in this place of not knowing what to do, but having to do something, constantly feeling like no matter what you do, it's wrong until you stumble across the right thing. And it's sort of this endless guessing game for people.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be that. That's true too.
You know, right? Absolutely. The other thing that I see a lot, I see it not only in the friends and family members who are starting to make better choices for themselves and their health, but I see it in people's reactions sometimes to the way that I eat. Like, for example, let's say I'm out with friends and there's a giant, pizza in front of everybody and everybody's partaking, and that basically would be my kryptonite. And yeah. I've had people say to me, "Oh, Alana, just one piece, you deserve it. Just one piece, you deserve it." And I say to them, you know what, actually, I deserve to feel amazing tomorrow. And as good as that pizza looks, and as wonderful as I'm sure it is, and I'm glad you all are experiencing it, I deserve to wake up tomorrow feeling my best. And I know that even if I get, say, 3 minutes of enjoyment from eating one slice of pizza, I'm going to suffer for 3 days. My job as a yogi is to suffer less. So I'm going to make that choice, which in the moment might be difficult because that pizza looks really good. But in the long run, I'm making a choice that helps me to lean toward the light. And I talk about this a lot, that our one, if we can call it a goal, if we can say yoga has a goal, and it doesn't really, but let's pretend that it does. If yoga has one goal, it is to empower us to employ something called viveka, which is discernment. And it's the ultimate ability in all of the choices that we have to make all day long. And we have to make an unbelievable number of choices all day. Do we get out of bed? Do we hit the snooze button? In all the choices, viveka empowers us to make the choices that help us to lean toward the light. And, the more empowered you are, the more you stay close to your yoga practice, the more you are fed, not just literally by good food, but spiritually nourished, emotionally nourished, the easier it is for you to make empowered choices, like choosing the types of food that actually make you feel stellar, even if a different food is presented to you. I'm sure you run into that a lot, right? Well, I just, I had one little slip up. I ate one donut.
Yeah.
I'm going to suffer for weeks, but I deserved that donut.
That's right. Okay. So this is such an interesting topic because food is so ingrained in our culture and in many, many different types of cultures and in celebrations and in bringing people together. I mean, I never feel so loved when somebody brings me a cup of coffee or makes me a meal, or I don't feel like I can love people more than when I'm cooking for them.
Right.
It is an expression of something. And so, again, back to the layers, it ties in so many other things though, because it's emotional and it's physical and it's mental, and there's too many things. So being able to discern where your level is, that's what you need to look at honing in, because some people would be able to have one piece of pizza and still wake up the next day and feel amazing. Mm-hmm. That's true for some people. If you aren't that person though, I mean, come to terms, right. Let's go, step it up. Yeah. Let's be honest.
That's your spiritual practice.
That is it. Yeah. And it doesn't need to mean that you are depriving yourself. Right. I love to say this. You don't need to feel guilty about eating a sundae. And you also don't get to give yourself a pat on the back for having a salad. Food is food is food. It's going to have an effect on you, good or bad, no matter which way you put it. Maybe some are neutral, maybe, but you are making a decision. Every single time you put something in your mouth, every single time, there's going to be an outcome. Mm-hmm. What is it that you want the outcome to be? If I can have, this is where my threshold is with the food, and if I pass that, then I'm going downhill, then maybe you allow yourself that threshold. Maybe you allow yourself that threshold as a way to stay in touch with food as a ritualistic part of our life. Mm-hmm. And maybe you say, that's not how I'm going to celebrate with you. And it doesn't mean that you're not celebrating. It doesn't mean that you're left out. And it doesn't mean that you're weird or that you're like extreme. It means that you have figured out, this is how I take care of myself. This is how I have learned to feed myself. I mean, that is the point.
Oh, that's so beautiful, Kylie. It really is self-care, isn't it? It really is prioritizing our best health. And we all, each of us as individuals, we are a priority. We are a priority.
And that
we, well, again, that's the practice, right? I mean, I think that because food is so integrated, not just into our physical health, but our psychological health, our emotional health, our relationship health, our communal health, prioritizing us over all of these other things, prioritizing ourselves, our well-being. Wow, that's so powerful. That's so powerful.
It's really the only thing that needs to matter. Yeah. I mean, and I also think that this idea that one thing equals another thing is really problematic.
Yeah.
Just because you aren't, I'll use the example of being a vegetarian, doesn't mean that you have to be or can't be any of these other things that people have in their mind. These assumptions and these like weird truths that people take on just simply don't have to exist. That's just simply not the case. Eating meat doesn't mean that you hate the environment. It doesn't mean that you aren't connected spiritually. It doesn't mean that you don't respect X, Y, or Z. That just is not the case. It means you respect what you have learned and taken time to learn about who you are and what you need. And you're honoring that and therefore showing up in your life for yourself and all of the people around you.
Right.
Again, putting your oxygen mask on. Sometimes literally.
I know. It's so important. And I so appreciate you bringing this up, Kylie. I mean, I think that this is an important lesson. And, before we close out our podcast today, I guess I just wanted the last thing I wanted you to share with us, if you can, is, and we know we have covered that there is no one size fits all, right? We can't make a blanket recommendation to anybody. But if there is one thing that we as a human being can do to optimize our health via nutrition, Kylie, what do you think that one thing would be?
I'll give you two.
You're cheating.
They kind of go together. I promise. The one thing that I think you can't go wrong with, because you can find little loopholes in all of this, is to eat colorfully.
Oh, I like that.
Eat colorfully. Where do you get the color in your food? Fruits and vegetables. How do you make sure that you're getting variety in your food? by eating colorfully? How can you make sure that you are accounting for all of the endless things that you need to get from food? Carbs, fats, proteins, antioxidants, phytonutrients. I mean, the water, fiber, the list goes on. If you have to try to like plan how you're getting all of those things, you're going to fail because it's not normal. It's just too much. But if you just think, I'm going to have color in my food, no matter what, at all costs, I'm going to have color. Natural color, right? I don't need to clarify that, do I?
No, she doesn't mean food coloring.
But if you're doing that, it takes away so much of the thought process and inherently includes everything that you're looking for.
That's fantastic. Eat colorfully. I love that. Was there a second thing, or was that your one thing?
I kept it to one.
All right.
No
I
cheating.
appreciate that.
No cheating.
All right. I appreciate that. All right. So we're leaving everybody with Eat Colorfully, and we're leaving everybody with a bit of a cliffhanger on what that second thing is. So to get that answer, Kylie, where can people hear more from you and learn more from you and work more with you?
So my website is stratanutrition.com. And from there, you can find all of the other ways that you can work with me. My Instagram and Facebook is Get Your Gut Health RD. So exactly what you can expect to get. That's what the name is. And then I actually, for those of you who are listening and you feel like you are really relating to these feelings of bloating and pain when you eat, or feeling really worse when you use your digestive system, coming up in 2 weeks, I am doing a completely free 3-day Jumpstart Your Gut Health training. And so you can find all of the information that you need to be able to register for that on my website. It's all over my Instagram and Facebook right now. If you're following along, you're going to get really annoyed at hearing all the messages, but it is so, so important. And it is the foundation of what you're going to base the rest of your nutritional choices off of. What goes through your gut? Your food, right?
Right.
So to not pay attention to that part of it, you're already starting behind the 8 ball, in my opinion. So anyway, that is something, and there is very little, Alana, as you know, there is very little room for free things in general, but particularly in the healthcare world.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I am able to create those opportunities, I really do try. So this is something that I am really excited to give, and I'm really hoping to see a lot of you there or hear from you about doing that. Again, completely free. It goes to 3 days and gives you all these great little tips that you can do totally on your own, at home, at your own pace.
Oh, I love that, Kylie. Thank you so much for offering that to people. And thank you very much for being on the podcast with me today.
It was a pleasure. I'm so honored. I really am. I'm so excited to do this. Thank you.
Absolutely, Kylie. We'll talk to you again soon.
Okay. See you, Anna.